Um, Officer Jim Carbone, he's the school resource officer for the high school here. We have Officer Pat Stone here and Officer Joanne Fountain. They're also school resource officers in the high school, middle school complex here. And then Detective Marjorie Jones. She works sex crimes for our police department and all kinds of other cases in the Detective Bureau also. And then Emily here is, she's from ICAC, which is up on the board here, Internet Crimes Against Children's Task Force. So, and she's the one doing the presentation tonight. ICAC is a large task force run by the County Prosecutor's Office. It encompasses a lot of law enforcement agencies. So we hope tonight is informative for you. If you have any questions, all of us will be here afterwards. We hope that you get something out of this presentation, take it home to your kids and share it. And then the schools are the ones who are presenting the program, so they're actually going to record the presentation and then be available to everybody else in the district to view and watch, and you guys can watch it again also. Okay? So with that, I'll give you Emily here for her presentation.
Hi everyone, my name is Emily Welka. I'm with the Ohio ICAC Task Force. I've been with them for about a year and a half now as their statewide outreach coordinator. So what I essentially do is I help out on the education side of things. So anything that has to do with teaching kids grades K through 12, I typically handle. We also try to educate as many other groups as possible. So we've talked at conferences for sexual assault response teams, forensic nurses, and so on. Within our realm as ICAC, we are one of 61 task forces across the entire country, and we strictly handle cases involving child pornography or child sexual abuse material. That's all we do day in and day out, and it is an increasing problem within the state of Ohio and across the entire United States. Just to kind of show you what our cases look like on a 2023 basis, I have a video to show you. I, strangely enough, found it on Instagram of all places, but I feel like it really encapsulates what we're up against in terms of our offenders, the ease at which they're able to commit their crimes in this digital age, and really just, you know, what we're up against essentially. This is not perfect. This is going to be edited out.
You look pretty woke up there.
I know.
When I was just starting out, it was harder. You really hush hush. But then the internet came along and everything changed. Now we hide in plain sight. And share all kinds of things. Rape, make recommendations, and just like anything else out there. Pre-internet, you know how hard it was to pretend to be a 9-year-old girl. Now I just roll up looking like a BFF. And the best part? The only thing that could stop me pretend I don't exist. You ask me, there's never been a better time to be a monster.
So with that video, it shows what our offenders are now looking like. I mean, everyone has their own kind of, stereotypical what these people tend to look like. And even myself, before I started in ICAC, I was like, they're the people that live in their parents' basement, they never see the light of day. But that isn't the case in our investigations. What we're seeing are there are individuals that, they have stable jobs, they have families, they're, members of the community, and they're still online exploiting kids. So it really just highlights what we're up against and what these people tend to look like. With that, I want to draw your attention to the issue within the state of Ohio. So we work very closely with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. On one side of things, they do like the missing kids, the age photographs, but on the other side, they handle any kind of child exploitation case that starts on the internet. So apps such as Instagram or Snapchat, websites, they are legally obligated to report instances of child exploitation. So this could be harassment, it could be enticement, material being traded between two accounts. Those apps and websites will report it to the National Center. What the National Center then does is they take all the information, so a username, a phone number, an email address, they will type it all up into a really nice report called a cyber tip, and they will send it out to whatever ICAC they believe would handle that case. So for us, we received 3,244 of these reports in 2015. And that was because our main focus in terms of social media was essentially just Facebook. Instagram and Snapchat were still kind of coming onto the scene, so a lot of younger kids weren't on there, so Facebook was really our biggest concern. Now, if we ask kids if they're on Facebook, they look at us a little funny and tell us it's for old people. Their words, not mine, I have Facebook, I promise. But that was really where our investigations started. Now, in 22 and up until this year's 23, we're receiving upwards of 17,000 cyber tips. And these are coming from apps such as Instagram. We get cyber tips from Google, YouTube, Kik, Discord, and so on. And they're apps that kids have access to very easily, whether it's they're not being monitored and they download it on their device, or maybe their friend isn't being monitored and they're using those apps with their best friend. Regardless of how they're gaining access, these are things that are all available on the ClearNet. Whether you're an adult downloading it on your device or a kid, it's very easy to access. And along with the spike in just the number of social media platforms, different internet platforms, people are also recognizing instances of child exploitation online. So it's kind of like a two-way street for us, is that it is happening more, but it is also being reported more. Kids are filing cyber tips, they're telling us what's happening online, parents are becoming aware, they're a lot more involved in their kids' digital journey, and therefore if they see something, they end up reporting something. So yes, there has been a massive spike, but it's kind of a two-way street on that. With our task force, because it is a national task force, like I said, we have 61 ICACs across the entire country. A little bit of where we come from is we were originally created by the Department of Justice in the late 90s because they knew that the internet was going to be the next frontier of crime. Thankfully, they recognized that and kind of put us together, but they also just recognized the ease at which these crimes are able to be committed. I mean, the cyber tips really just show you how much this happens just within the state of Ohio. We aren't even looking on a national level where we receive upwards of 1 million tips every year. Like I said before, we deal strictly with child pornography cases. I'm going to use the term child sexual abuse material, or CSAM, just so they mean the exact same thing. It's just that it paints a much more realistic picture of what we actually see on a daily basis, and that it is child sexual abuse material. Going back to the cyber tips and where they come from, there is a very real idea that these cases can't possibly start on things that we use every single day, like things such as Google or Snapchat or Instagram, but that is not the case. So this is a breakdown of who gave us the most cyber tips in 22. And the top provider for that year was Google. So Google Drive, Google Photos, Google Accounts. Google owns YouTube, so all of those cyber tips are put in under one kind of header, but it's things that kids use every day. I mean, how many of us go to Google to look something up? It's where we get cyber tips from, unfortunately. And then we also have things such as like Snapchat. We do still get cyber tips from Facebook, and then a couple other platforms, Discord, Kik, Instagram, and so on. So it just goes to show you that these cases happen on things that we use every single day, and kids are also using. And we're not stressing to kids that social media is an evil place, because that's not realistic for us. Like, kids still want to be connected, to be on these sites. It's just important as parents that we realize that, you know, even though we use it all the time, it is still a place where crime does occur. With our cases and with our task force in general, a lot of times we are grouped in with human trafficking. So I just kind of want to show you just a quick distinction of human trafficking, their cases, their tips, and how they stack up against what we see on a daily basis. So in 21, the National Human Trafficking Hotline, they received slightly over 1,000 human trafficking tips. 72 of those tips involved minor children. So just kind of show you the minor aspect of it, the child aspect of it. Then when you look at our cases, we received 35 child sex trafficking tips, and this accounted for 0.3% of the total tip load for 2021. 680 of these tips were enticement tips, so that is when an adult reaches out to a child with the intent of meeting them in a physical location for sexual activity. But the real bulk of where our tips came from was from the trading, the creation, the distribution of child exploitation material. Whether it's a photo, a video, 87% of our tips were strictly the trading of that sort of material. So with this comes my soapbox moment. Is human trafficking a problem? Yes. I will never deny that it is an issue in Ohio, in the entire United States. Are your children more likely to be affected by human trafficking or by online exploitation? It is most definitely going to be online exploitation. I mean, human trafficking, like I said, it's an issue, but it shouldn't take away from the fact that kids with devices that are unmonitored are way more likely to be exploited on there versus in any aspect related to human trafficking. Within our cyber tips, we also split them up by category, so to speak. So financial side, that's about 2% of our cyber tips. That involves sextortion, which I will talk about a little bit later. But we also have this category of explicit conversation and role play, the sex category, that is the enticement category. And then lastly, our biggest bulk is content. So the creation, the distribution, the possession of child sexual abuse material. So that was a lot of the ICAC side of things. I'm a big numbers person. I just kind of wanted to give you hard numbers on all of that. But a lot of parents say that they have huge issues with social media. It kind of feels like kids are over there with their understanding of social media and parents are over here. And there's a huge hurdle to get to that point. So with that, I want to present a study that came out of Chicago where Lurie Children's Hospital surveyed about 2,000 parents of either former, they were parents of teenagers, or they are currently. Just to get a feel of what parents, like how they view social media. And they saw that it was two distinct categories. One was what social media was taking away from their kids, and the other was what social media was providing. So in what it was taking away was sleep, face-to-face interaction, time from their schoolwork, and so on. And what parents cited that it exposed their children to was things like hate speech, sexual content, cyberbullying, harassment, and so on. And with the parents that were surveyed, there was a much larger concern with what social media was taking away from their kids versus what they were being exposed to. So these are some of the percentages that came out of that study. Like I said, parents were really concerned with kids not getting enough sleep, not enough physical activity, schoolwork. But with the behavior that was inappropriate, more than half the parents, about 51%, cited that the content was too sexual in what their kids were seeing. And I mean, we can all agree that content and media in our society is driven by this idea that it is okay to put out sexual content. I mean, you can Google what is sexting and you will get article after article on, what is sexting and how to do it safely. So for kids, if they're hearing about it either at school, from friends or whoever, and they don't know what it is, and they go home and they look it up, that's the articles that are going to come up. So for us as parents and as caregivers, it's important to get ahead of that conversation, which I'm going to cite slightly later when we start talking about sexting and sextortion. But the conclusion of this study was that all screen time is not equal. And that's really what we try to stress to kids, is that We're not gonna tell them to go home, lock up their device, never use it again, and just, be unconnected, because that's not really realistic for us. And kids want to be connected with other people, like their friends, classmates, and so on. So we really stress that critical thinking skills are really key when it comes to these connections. And as parents, establishing those thinking skills with technology is also critical. And with this study, it also reflected offline vulnerabilities. So, for example, they cited cyberbullying and how those kids who are usually cyberbullied also experience some form of bullying at school as well. So with that, I want to stress rules and boundaries. And I know it's super easy for me to say this. However, along with these rules and boundaries, it is super important to have critical conversations with your kids. So setting time limits with them, who they can interact with is also key. Because a lot of our cases do start with a random conversation where an adult reaches out to a minor and this minor continues to respond to them. And then lastly, knowing what apps and sites they use. It's not enough to just look through their phone, open a couple apps, and then call it a day. It really involves going into every single app, looking at the profile, looking at the messages, and digging into their connections as well. So with social media, we found that kids don't view it the same as we do. Unfortunately, there's this huge focus on likes, followers, how popular I am depends on my status on social media. So privacy for them is a lot more fluid than it is for us adults, where we see it as very black and white. As adults and as parents, it's important to stress privacy, and we also stress it with kids, that if they are on social media, private accounts are super important. So this is just a quick example of how to turn on privacy settings. So this is Instagram. You just go under settings and privacy, and you toggle that top switch over, it will set the account to private. Private accounts are not automatically enabled. When you set up your social media, you have to manually go in there and switch it from public to private. And with apps, especially like social media, anything that has a distinct profile page that you can see photos, comments, and so on, we really try to stress to kids that it not only protects their information, but it also protects their friends' information. Because if I'm looking at someone's account and it's private, I can't see their followers. I can't see who they're friends with. So we've really found that kids, if they also focus on other people's privacy, like people they care about, they tend to be a little more willing to switch that account from public to private. So this is Snapchat, and I bring this app up because it's slightly different than other apps that we've seen, in that a public setting is essentially a geolocation on a map. So if you have ghost mode turned off, it has your character on a map within Snapchat. If you have it turned on, it removes your character. And you can designate who can see your location, like your friends, certain people, only certain people. But we really stress to kids that it's important to have it completely private. Another feature with ghost mode that we found, and this is just a newer update, I was messing around with Snapchat and found it a couple weeks ago, but if you have your account set to have ghost mode turned off, and other people within your friend group also have it turned off, you can see where they travel within a certain time period. So that top one, I switched my account to be public, and my friend Ashley, her account is also public, so I saw that she drove from Columbus to Parma about 10 hours ago. Same thing with my friend Maggie, she traveled from Illinois to Wisconsin about 23 hours ago. So it's not only just showing real-time location, it also shows where you traveled within a certain time frame. So talking about privacy with kids, we found that there's a lot of success in giving them real contextual examples. It's not enough to just say, set your account to private because I said so. Giving them kind of some background information we've seen really helps them understand it further. One of the things we do when we go into school is usually we're wearing an ICAC polo, and I ask them, if I took a picture right now of myself, what could you tell about me? If I tag the location that I was at this school, it says that I was here on this day. I'm wearing an ICAC shirt. You can look up ICAC and you can see where I work and where I could potentially live in relation to that. So we really try to just give them contextual background info as to why it's important to protect that information, because it is so easy to look up where a workplace is, where someone might live, looking up a phone number or a name, and so on. So that's how we kind of add that context to this risky behavior. These are some common parental control apps that a lot of parents have said that they either use, they like, so on. My only caveat with these is that they are not perfect. So, for example, Life 360 is great if you have a kid that's driving. It tells you how fast you're going, it tells you where you are. However, my example with this is that growing up, we were required to have Life 360, and my brother, to get around it, just left his phone at home. So, there are ways to circumnavigate things. So my point with this is that while these are great at doing some things, they are not perfect. They're not going to be better than you going into someone's profile, going into your child's profile, and looking at the messages, looking what's being said, and so on. So great tool, but they are not 100% perfect. Essentially, the biggest question that we get from parents is, how do I know what my kids are doing online? Like, how do I really figure out what they're doing, what their interests are, and how to get ahead of it? And we really stress that active and ongoing conversations are key. There's not, a one thing fix all that you can put on their device. There's not, one thing that you can say to them at one time and just, it clicks for them. It is an ongoing learning experience. My example with this is I had a mom who couldn't figure out Fortnite. She was Googling it. She was trying to figure it out on her own, and it just wasn't working. So what she did was she instituted a Friday night game night where she would let her kids play Fortnite, but she would play with them. So they got to, have fun, play the game that they loved, but she also got to sit there, see how it worked, see how they connected with other people, and so on. So that's really my best example that I can provide to all of you, is that it's super important to just, integrate yourself into the technology. Maybe you're finally ready to let your child have Instagram. Maybe with that process, you both set up your Instagram accounts, you follow each other, you get to see, each other's profiles, and so on. So that's just really our biggest thing, is that it has to be an ongoing conversation with your kids. It's not, sitting them down, telling them, keep your accounts private, don't talk to strangers online, and that's the end of it. It has to be, frequent conversations. So I want to circle back to the demand problem in terms of the content. So we have this idea, and I did too before I started at ICAC, that the content can only be created by adults, either by trading the material, offending on kids and creating it that way. But unfortunately, that is not our reality in 2023. A lot of kids, consensually are creating content, and that is contributing to this 60% category. Sexting is popular in every high school, some middle schools, and unfortunately even younger, because of a lot of things that exist in our society. Like I talked about before, if you just Google what is sexting, you're going to get a bunch of articles. So if you're a kid that's never heard about it before, and you see all these articles saying, this is how you do it safely, they're going to be more inclined to engage in that behavior. So these are some statistics from 2020. They've held up over the last couple years in terms of who's participating in it, the age groups, and so on. And while this is a solid study, my quick story with this is that as a task force, we try to stay as updated as possible. We want to know what's actually happening. So what we do is every so often we'll sit down with juniors and seniors across the state of Ohio. These are kids that are involved in their school, they're involved with their classmates, sports clubs, and so on. And we usually just host a meeting with them to just really figure out are we saying the right things in schools? And we ask them very candidly about sexting. Is it a problem? Are we making it bigger than it ought to be? And so on. And the answer that really stuck out to me was someone said that the kids that are caught by law enforcement, school, their parents, it's a very small percentage of who is actually participating. So unfortunately, like I said, it is happening. We have kids as young as 9, 10 years old who are posting stuff online, either knowing that they're doing it or it's just someone told them that it's what they do and they did it. Whatever the reason, it is unfortunately getting younger and younger in this issue of taking new photos, taking new videos, and putting them on the internet. So with that, regardless of the age of your child, whether they're super young, whether they're upwards of 17, it's important to get ahead of this issue. So having age-appropriate conversations with them about sexting, sending inappropriate photos, keeping inappropriate photos, it's important to have them sooner rather than later. Because like I said, kids are very curious. If they don't know something, they're going to look it up, and they're going to figure it out on their own. So with sexting education, it's very similar to the privacy aspect. So providing real contextual examples as to why it is risky. Saying things such as it can be passed around without your permission. As soon as you send that picture, you have no control over it. Saying that it can get you in trouble with school, with your parents, and so on. It's just super important that kids are made aware of the actual risks. Because a lot of times we'll go into schools and kids will be shocked by the things that we say surrounding sexting. That it's illegal, that there is a juvenile court system that deals with it. And they have no idea. They go into school thinking that it's totally normal, not aware of the risks at all. With sexting also comes this risk of sextortion. And what sextortion is essentially when an adult poses online as a minor, whether it's a boy, girl, whoever, and they reach out to other real minors via messaging. After a while, these adults will convince the minors to send them a new photo or a new video. They'll use a series of different tactics, such as if you send me one, I'll send you one. I work for a modeling agency. Whatever they can say that would get these victims to send pictures, that's what they're going to do. And then once these photos or videos are sent, there's some sort of blackmail aspect. So we'll see a lot of times that they'll demand money, usually thousands of dollars. They'll demand additional photos, additional videos. They'll maybe escalate it into saying like sex acts or other things. But there is always a blackmail aspect in sextortion cases. So this is a real incident that we received about a couple of years ago. This is the cyber tip that was involved with the case, so it came out of Instagram. And these were the real messages that were sent to our victim. So our victim in this case was a 17-year-old boy. And he had received a random message one night on Instagram, and he decided to respond. And after about 20 minutes of talking to this person asked for a new video. And what they did to really encourage the 17-year-old to send a video was they sent one of, it was an underage naked female. We don't know where they got it from. It could have been from somewhere online, a previous victim, we don't know. So our victim in this case sees this video, and that prompts him to then send his own video. After that video was sent, these were the messages that came through from the suspect. So he was demanding $6,000 for the total removal of this video, saying things such as, I'm going to ruin your life, tell me how much you can pay, I'm going to post it on social media networks, and so on. And how this all started was from a simple conversation like this. So these were the first messages that came out of that case. And this beginning small talk section lasted for about 20 minutes. This case lasted for a total of 20 hours. So from 20 minutes onward, all that happened was our victim essentially begging this man to stop, saying things such as, I don't have $6,000, why are you doing this? And so on and so forth. And with that brings me to my next point, is that these are happening very quickly. Our normal cases, we have weeks, if not months, to investigate our suspects, figure out who they are, find a location, and so on. Our sextortion cases are happening in a matter of hours. As soon as that photo or that video is sent by the victim, our suspects are immediately demanding something. Our case, this one specifically, lasted 20 hours. We had a case out of San Jose that we worked with that ICAC that was about 5 hours. So they're very quick to happen. And unfortunately, sextortion was something that we didn't see coming with kids. So our education on sexting has been very one-sided. In the past, we've used a lot of scare tactics, saying things such as, you're going to get in trouble, you could go to jail, it's a felony offense, and so on. So that really does not prompt kids to come forward, especially in an incident like this, because they have someone that has their picture, has their video, and is also demanding money. It's a worst nightmare for kids. So this is creating a massive mental health crisis for us. Kids don't feel comfortable telling their parents, they don't feel comfortable telling anyone. So it's causing a lot of self-harm and suicide cases. There was an individual, James Woods, out of Streetsboro, that he was a 17-year-old boy, great athlete, straight A student, and in the span of a day, he had took his own life because of sextortion. We predict, or we assume that there have been about 15 suicides across the entire United States in the last about a year and a half that we were able to connect to sextortion. And that was just because there was an officer on the case that knew to look at the phone. Because a lot of these individuals do not display signs of suicide. In James's case, he was a great student. He wasn't isolated. He wasn't giving away his things. There was no indication of depression. And then, tragically, that's how it ended. But that's what we're trying to stress to kids, is that even though this is happening and maybe you did something that was a mistake, you can always come forward. You can tell your parents. You can tell a friend, a teacher, whoever. It's just important that they know that they don't have to handle this by themselves. So as parents, if someone does come to you saying, I'm in this situation, I don't know what to do, we really stress that you don't blame them. It took enough courage for this child to report the situation in the first place, so we really stress that being their advocate is super, super important. Do not continue to talk to the offender, because these offenders are very different from what we typically see. And what I mean by that is that they are only focused on profit. They don't really care about photos, the videos, the gender, the age of the kid. They just want to get money. They want to talk to as many kids as possible and get as much as possible. We stress to screenshot the messages, the offender's profile, because that's really important for us in terms of identification, and then immediately report the situation to local law enforcement and the NCMEC cyber tip line. So the NCMEC cyber tip line is report.cybertip.org. This site is really great for us because it's a national, if not international, reporting system. So let's say, for example, that we have a suspect offending on someone in Ohio. We can corroborate that cyber tip with if there are other investigations happening across the United States. So it's a very simple form. You can say, what are you reporting? Like, what type of incident? Where did it happen? And then there's stuff further down in terms of a more detailed description. In terms of documenting an incident in general, it is very much similar to documenting a sextortion incident, in that you don't delete anything, don't retaliate, don't respond, just take the information you have and make a cyber tip line report. If you're looking for additional information outside of this in terms of conversation starters, like let's say you need to talk to your kid about cyberbullying, the National Center also has a bunch of age-specific conversation things. They have a bunch of resources for kids. So if you're looking for actual handouts and things that you can talk about with your kid, missingkids.org is really great for that. These are some additional resources that we really stress to parents. They're very similar to the National Centers in that they provide just really great conversation starters. So if you're looking for anything specific, I highly recommend checking out a couple of these sites. I'm going to hold for the picture. Okay. If you're looking for more numbers-based things in terms of surveys and studies, I highly recommend parents.thorn.org. They try to do annual studies on different topics such as sextortion, cyberbullying, harassment, and so on. So if you're more like a numbers person, I recommend that as well. This is our information, and we do try to help the public out as much as possible. So if you have any questions or concerns, that is our main line, and these are our socials as well. This is my contact info, so if you think of something later on, you're like, I really wish I knew more about this or would have asked, please feel free to reach out to me. With that, I want to thank you for your time and being here. I know life is extremely busy. But does anyone have any questions on what we're going to talk about?
Has your department talked about how you're going to deal with or prevent any kind of AI regarding extortion or anything like that? I think it'll be even easier, going forward.
Yeah.
AI involved.
So we are trying to get ahead of the curve on AI in terms of education. We're still kind of building it because up until this point, it's been like an actual person getting a photo, getting a video from someone instead of them being like, I have this already because it's AI generated. So in terms of what we're telling kids, we're focusing more on like the self-generated content, but we are trying to like get ahead of the curve in terms of AI. Any other questions? I'm gonna also hang out here for a little bit, so if you think of something later on, don't stress.
If your child has a phone or a computer, what can you do so that they don't innocently end up on a site? Like, are there some things that we can do that prevent them, that they would land on a site that could be dangerous or anything like that?
For sure. So I know there are a number of parental controls dependent on the browser that you use. You can set those up. I know at the school specifically, I'm sure you guys have some sort of system that you use. Okay, perfect. So, but at home, that is more like you have to set it up. So there are parental controls, or like, you know, you can block certain sites. However, I mean, it's weighing like Google, like just Googling something, and you're going to get answers that come up. It's weighing like, do I block Google and go from there, or do I allow them to use it for, you know, whatever reason it may be. But yes, you can like block certain sites.
And can you put those types of restrictions on their phone? I mean, because I've given my son a phone. How do I go in and put restrictions that he couldn't go in and change if he wanted to?
So in terms of browsers on cell phones, I'm not entirely sure. I know on a computer, like desktop, it's a little easier, but in terms of like a cell phone, I don't have like.
You can actually go to the provider, so if you have like T-Mobile or Verizon Wireless and actually take it there, they'll walk you through. Unfortunately, you know, usually you have to wait a little bit to get in there to get to see somebody, but it's definitely worth the wait, and walk you step by step on how to put the parental controls on it. You'll need both phones. You'll need your phone and the child's phone. You can do it at home too by there's different like software that you can actually purchase that will pick up on ping words, like certain things. And you can set it like, there's like packages where you set the words to like, you know, I don't know, profanity or sexual things. They can do that as well, but again, it's a cost for that, whereas your provider does it for free. The packages that you get, they're a little bit more providing more information. So some people think it's intrusive because they think that you're not giving your child enough space to grow. As a parent of 4 girls, I didn't find it very intrusive because in this world that we live in, there are a lot of scary things in here. And my kids, you know, I want to say they're good kids, but they get into things, as we know as parents, that they shouldn't. And it gave me that extra set of eyes to kind of like, hey, it's some, you know, strange person trying to contact my daughter, and she just thinks it's you know, another 16-year-old boy or 16-year-old girl. You know, so I actually use a couple of them myself personally. It was definitely good. They weren't too terribly expensive.
So, and I'll expand, so all of us are parents also, right? How many of your kids own their own phone? Nobody, right? They're your phones on your account. So you have complete control over those phones. And Emily mentioned this earlier in her presentation too. The best thing you can do, and it's uncomfortable for all of us because our kids are way more know way more about technology than we do, especially with these apps. But the best thing you can do is if they want an app and you allow them to have it, Snapchat or whatever, if they get Snapchat, you get Snapchat. And you're their first friend. So when you set up all these controls and you're their friend, now you can see everything that they do. And then go into their phone all the time. Set up the parental controls, but go into their phone and check and see what they're doing. And every time they want an app and you allow it, you get that app. Learn how to use it, and they'll be thrilled to teach you something, right? They can show how much they know and show you how to use the app and stuff. But then you're their friend and you can see how it works and you can help keep track of things like that.
Another good thing to do is like with me as a parent, I take my 16-year-old's phone every night. I commit the cutoff date or time, so 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, she has to give me the phone. I set the password on her phone, and if she decides to change that password, as Sergeant said, well, I own that phone, so that's my password. So if she blocks me out of it, she doesn't get that phone back, so I don't give her access to it. So what I do then is I actually go through her phone, because you could be the most diligent parent, and you know most parents are pretty good. It's just an ever-changing world. text messages, DMs, they fly. They can type those things and there'll be a dialogue for a day that's like over 3,000 messages between, two students or two kids. So it's hard to actually go through them, but I would skim through them and go through them, like to look at some of the content and kind of look like, who is this person you're talking to? Like, what are they really saying? Because it's always usually in code, so you really have to know the language and again, always have the open conversations with them because, every social media platform has a way to get around it and they know. And even my own children know. Unfortunately, had to deal with social media issues as a mom too with my teenager, because they're so smart. And I'm proud my kid's smart, but at the same time, I have to be a little bit smart because unfortunately there are a lot of creepy people in this world. And for her to get involved in a lot of things and that I don't want her to, it'd be really easy because of peer pressure. You could be, again, the gossip parent. So they just have to be on top of it.
Any other questions for us? We have Detective Jones.
Hi. I just want to take a quick 5-10 minutes out of your guys' time and kind of explain to you the local aspect of when any of these crimes or any of these situations happen. So a lot of times, especially dealing with the sextortion, which seems to be more prevalent and common, I feel like I'm getting, 2 to 3 just a month from kids within the city. I primarily do the sex crimes for North Olmsted, child crimes, the child pornography and human trafficking for our department. So if any of this happens, eventually it'll come to me and you guys as parents will end up having to deal with me. So I just kind of want to give you a bit of tips and tricks as well. We work with ICAC during a lot of this stuff, but a lot of times when it comes down to the local, what I want you guys to do is never, as she said, get angry at your kids when they come to you because they're going through that scary moment where somebody is threatening them, threatening to send these pictures to all their friends, their family. I've had, stellar students that make these mistakes, and I've had students that constantly get in trouble that make these mistakes. So that range is everywhere with these children. So don't get mad at them. Be that calm adult, be that person that they can come to, because you guys eventually are going to come to either one of the school resource officers or the police department, and it is a very intrusive time, not only for them and they're embarrassed, but also for you guys as well. As she had stated, don't delete anything. Please don't delete anything. Then also do not send any money, no matter what they want. If they'll start out with $6,000 and they'll talk their way down to $300. And you might think, okay, I'll send you the $300 and this will go away. It doesn't go away. That's just the gateway. They know now that you have sent that $300 and they're going to come back a week later and try to get more money. And you might block them or think you're blocking them, but they'll create another profile and try to chat with them. It happens all the time. When it comes to us and our steps, a lot of times we're going to ask consent to those phones or tablets or iPads or iPods, whatever it is. That's your way of trying to help us, because if I don't get that consent, then it's just going to make this process a lot longer. I'm going to have to go through search warrants and subpoenas and everything. Getting that consent allows me to get it off to a forensic examiner, whether it's we have one local in Westlake or whether, depending on the severity with ICAC, taking it to ICAC so that way we can get those. Yes, your child might be without a phone for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but it will eventually get back to you guys. We're not trying to keep it forever. We know that phones are lifelines nowadays. So getting that consent so that way we're able to get into that allows me to track down an IP address, whether to see if it's somewhere local or somewhere within the states. And a lot of times we are commonly seeing it come from overseas in Nigeria, which is a big place that this is happening because they can make that quick money. There is a good Hulu documentary out called Sextortion, and it goes over, there was 2 teens recently that had committed suicide. I believe it was either in Michigan or Indiana, and it goes over the parents and kind of the process of going through that. So if you get a chance, you want to watch it on Hulu. It's called Sextortion, and it's very good, just learning tool as well. So if you have any other questions, we're here.
I've got a question more for school board or any administrators. I'm sure that sex ed is taught in, I don't know, if it's middle school still. We had it. I was just wondering if this kind of information is said in that if that content, if this content is set in that type of class setting, will let kids know that, hey, this is going on?
Well, so one of the reasons that I was so graciously employed here was because that's what I teach.
Oh,
So we just started doing, teaching in the middle school. So I teach a class about social media, about having a good digital footprint, which is, so we don't want to make everything so negative. We want to show them how to properly use it, but also show them, okay, if you're ever a victim of extortion or sextortion, or if you're ever a victim, for any reason of what to do and how to do it. And again, you said it, talk to the parents, make sure that you're having those positive conversations. And I like what the detective said about don't shame these kids. Because one of the things I can tell you in every single class that I've taught, when we start talking about, I tell the story about a situation, a case that I handled with a 14-year-old or a 13-year-old kid. They're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that she got in the car. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that he thought that was a girl he was talking to. They shamed the people in the room. So what that does is it makes everyone in that room thinking if they have a situation, they're never going to report it because all their peers have now said to them, it's such a shameful thing, why would I ever do it? So we have to make sure our kids understand what a victim is, that they are truly a victim because they are children. They're not adults. And it's such a big deal to make them understand it. And again, you can't, it's conversation, do the what ifs. Kids do not come to you and they're like, I'm sure you probably know as a parent, what did you do today? Oh, I don't know. I had lunch. You have to really pull stuff out of them. Typical things. You have to ask really clear questions. What's Tommy doing? How's Joey doing? How's Cindy doing? What's going on in there? I thought, what's going on at lunch today? And even if you're not really too sure what was going on with lunch, something was going on at lunch, let me tell you. Something always goes on at lunch. And you just got to keep that line of communication. But we're working on it, a little bit, expanding that brought out as far as education, going from younger ages from kindergarten all the way up. And that's what we've been working on together. And I'm looking to add anything else to that.
Our actual part of personal living course at a really.
So is that what it's called now?
It is, yes, and that we do that course, actually for our fifth grade students. It's been in our fifth grade curriculum for a long time, many decades, which really goes over the reproductive system and things like that. And what Officer Felton is talking about then begins in the middle school.
I have a fifth grader, and that topic hasn't been
Well, it's
brought up
coming
yet.
up in January.
Oh,
You're going to be
that's
invited
gonna
to
be
a parent meeting. It's on my calendar. So be invited and be able to hear all of what will be the content of that course that your child will be participating.
I'm also working with the school resource officers to get with the students at assemblies kind of maybe once a year to just kind of talk to them about the severity and what they can do to try to avoid it, and if it happens, what next steps they could take as well.
And at the beginning of every school year, their class assemblies, we go over not only with sexting and phones and fighting, we go over all those things and the consequences to doing those things. And then also in health class sophomore year, we typically go in there and address the kids in those issues again, the consequences and the severity. Because it's real. I mean, we deal with this. We're just lucky that we have the support. We have assistant superintendent, business director, our social worker. I mean, we're all here together, right? We're all in this together. This isn't just a North Olmsted issue. This is an issue everywhere. But we really have a lot of layers here of support, which I can't speak for every other city, but I know we have here, and I'm kind of proud of it. Any other questions? Well, thank you. This is going to be, we recorded this evening, so it'll be available again, but we're always available as well. We have a lot, like I said, we have 2 assistant superintendents in the room. We have our superintendent back, our school board president. We have our Mr. Tachek back there, who was a teacher here, coach here, also athletic director, now business director, Amy Rutledge in the back, who put this together. So we're very, very blessed with everybody. We're here for you, here to support kids and families. And, you know, the education piece is very important, but we have to get through everything else to make sure these kids are having a good, safe education and a learning experience here. So one thing we pride ourselves on here in North Olmsted, so please let us know if there's anything we can do.
And you can reach any of us at the school, you know, send us an email to the school, we all have email addresses. If there's a problem with the kid, or like you're having like a situation with the friends not getting along, I mean, usually most of things stem from social media or some sort of social media problem. Give us a call and we can kind of dive into it, because we're all three of us are in the school every day, you know, so we can kind of look at what's going on. And really, if you need help with something, hey, I'm having problems with Snapchat or whatever the application